family of anti-apartheid activists. Political leader in the underground SACP, Ahmed Timol, has weighed in on the death of former apartheid President FW de Klerk. Has thrown his weight. Timol, was thrown from the 10th floor of the notorious police headquarters in Johannesburg in 1971. Now, Timol's nephew, who's weighing in on this conversation, says that the tragedy that apartheid victims have continuously reached out to perpetrators to say that although the Truth and Reconciliation Commission passed, they still needed the truth. Apartheid security policeman Joao Rodriguez died this year, bringing the quest for Timol's justice to an end. MTS Kaji has written a letter to the president where he implores him to break the silence on why post-TRC prosecutions have not happened under an ANC-led government. He joins us now. Very good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Before we answer or perhaps talk about the details of the letter, it's 42 years after your uncle's death, and you've been essentially on an emotional roller coaster, dedicating your 25-year quest for justice. As you heard the news of, Joao Rodriguez's death, what went through your mind after all these years trying to find the truth, trying to get some sense of accountability?
Yes, good morning, Mpo. I must just correct you that this year marks the 50th anniversary for the death of my uncle. And you're correct. I mean, it's been 25 years of my life that I've spent pursuing this particular matter. And very, very tragically, hurtfully, getting the news that Joao Rodriguez, the last man standing, as they would say, the man who, on his own version of events, placed himself in the room where he claimed that my uncle had jumped to his death on the 27th of October 1971, had passed on without having his day in court. This was more than 3 years after Judge Palimote ruled on the 12th of October 2017 that Rodriguez must be investigated for his role in the death of my late uncle. And he attended 19 court appearances with all postponements. His legal team at the same time submitted a 342A application to the full bench of the South Gauteng High Court, as well as the Supreme Court of Appeal in Bloemfontein. And on both occasions, it was dismissed. But what's very interesting is that the legal arguments presented was that Rodriguez's rights in terms of the Constitution was infringed. They made reference to secret amnesty deals. They made claims again of political interference that prevented the NPA from timely concluding this particular matter. And on this particular basis, they needed all charges against their client to be dismissed. And more worryingly, two senior prosecutors from the National Prosecuting Authority, filing their affidavits as part of the first respondents' papers to the full bench of the South Gauteng High Court, also confirmed, talks of political interference, allegations of political interference. And the full bench ruled that Tory Pretorius and Chris McAdam must be investigated for their conduct. And the NDPP to date has not done anything on this matter, or there's no evidence of it. So this is the background, under which the late Joao Rodriguez passes on without having his day in court. And for me, this was the individual who had all the answers. Again, based on his version of events at the 1972 and 2017 inquest, and yet because the lengthy processes of having his day in court, the lengthy delays, which ironically were paid by you and I as taxpayers under the State Attorney's Office, allowed this man to simply get away without being held accountable for his role for the death of my uncle.
And because of that, you want answers from President Cyril Ramaphosa. There are questions that are lingering in your mind that somehow don't add up. There are loopholes that you want the president to answer to.
No, correct, Now, during this 25-year spanning of my journey, I obviously focus my questions, my anger, my direction at different actors involved in the TRC matters. If we go back to the TRC itself, in 1996, none of the security branch officers applied for amnesty. Yet the TRC investigator had interviewed João Rodrigues, made a note that he must be subpoenaed, and yet the TRC failed to subpoena him. In 2003, I had asked the NPA to follow up on this matter. They failed to do so. In 2005, I located two other senior interrogators in my uncle's matter, Johannes Henry Gloy and Zakaria Fanika. I had 3 telephonic conversations with Gloy, and he simply told me that I must go and read the inquest records of 1972 that cleared him, and that I must continue with my life because my grandparents had moved on. So I focused my anger, my questions to the NPA, to the TRC commissioners, and then the more research that I've conducted, the picture becomes very clear. When Rodrigues' legal counsel are talking of political amnesty, secret amnesty deal, and when earlier this year the FW de Klerk Foundation issued a press release talking of some sort of an agreement between the Nationalist Party and the ANC operatives pre-1994, where de Klerk asked for these matters to be halted, it then dawned upon me that my focus was incorrectly directed. That the actors that must account for what transpired are the likes of Cyril Ramaphosa, Rolf Meyer, Neil Barnard, the likes of President of the ANC, Thabo Mbeki, Jacob Zuma, and Cyril Ramaphosa, because they were all privy to what transpired during those negotiation processes. And that is where the so-called sunset clauses came about, we're specifically talking about amnesty. And that is why, on this occasion, I've written to Cyril Ramaphosa as the president of the ANC, because TRC commissioners as well, the apartheid-era victims family group, have written to him as president of this country with absolutely no response from him. So I'm reaching out to him 50 years after the death of my uncle, which I term as secret lies and cover-ups, pleading to him to come clean and to set the record straight.
Now, many members of the apartheid-era killing machine, so to speak, are already dead. In fact, as you and I speak, the last apartheid president, FW de Klerk, is being laid to rest in a private ceremony. Then raising or perhaps bringing to the forefront the question of what this is about. Is it about vengeance or is it about justice?
Well, again, it's a very interesting question, Umpo. Excuse me. If you look at the mandate of the TRC, it's all about reconciliation and about justice and about bringing perpetrators and victims together. There's nothing about prosecution. And we as apartheid-era victims' families have gone along with the guidance and leadership of the African National Congress at the time. That let's look at nation building, let's look at reconciliation, because it's in the interest of this country to move forward. But how do we move forward when apartheid-era perpetrators are not prepared to make full confessions of the crimes that they had committed? I mean, the likes of de Klerk, who prior to his death issues a video clip telling us, giving us his apology. It's unacceptable. But just as unacceptable for me are those leaders within the ANC who were part of these particular negotiations, who remained silent, as well as those TRC commissioners. I think there were many, like Archbishop Desmond Tutu and the late Dr. Alex Bourain and other commissioners who were honest and committed to the TRC. But I'm of the view that there are many other commissioners who are well aware of these deals that have taken place and have remained silent on this matter. So at the end of the day, apartheid-era victims suffered under the height of apartheid. And more painfully, in a democratic South Africa, we continue searching for answers. And yet, as the governing party in this particular country, the ANC has made absolutely no attempt whatsoever to deal with the TRC unresolved issues.
Absolutely. Many questions and very little answers. Imtiaz Kaji, let's leave it there. Thank you for your time.